After I bought him a house, my boyfriend said I was too masculine to be loved, then moved his new girl in and changed the locks. He told me to get therapy. But the deed was in my name, and I made one call before the sheriff kicked them both out. The key didn't fit anymore. That was the first sign. I stood there in front of our house, no, my house, with my overnight bag still slung on one shoulder, holding the grocery bag with his favorite damn oat milk, wondering if maybe I was losing my mind. I tried again. The key twisted halfway, then stopped dead. The sound that followed was his laugh, from inside. When the door opened, I saw her first. The softer woman he said he needed. Her hair was loose and honey blonde, the kind of color you can only get from a salon. She wore one of his shirts. Behind her, he was barefoot, smirking, like I was the crazy ex who wouldn't take a hint. Hey, he said, leaning against the doorframe. You shouldn't just show up unannounced. It's not healthy. Not healthy. I blinked, trying to process. I'd just gotten off a 12-hour shift at the ER. I'd spent 3 years paying for this house, splitting every bill, handling every repair. I was the one who secured the loan when his credit tanked, and I'd made the final payment, the last installment, just 4 days ago. What's going on? I asked, already knowing the answer. He sighed, rubbing his jaw like this was exhausting for him. Look, I didn't want it to be like this. You're intense. You have this energy that's just too masculine. I need someone who lets me lead, someone softer, and honestly, you should talk to someone about your control issues. Then he said it. The line that still rings in my ears. I changed the locks for your own good. Please don't make a scene. My chest burned. The deed is in my name. He shrugged, like I just said something in another language. That's not really fair, is it? You wouldn't even have this house if it weren't for me. You're not coming in. You can pick up whatever's yours later. I'll box it. Her hand rested on his arm. He kissed her knuckles. Like this was some movie, and I was just the first act tragedy. I dropped the grocery bag right there. The oat milk burst, leaking across the porch. My hand shook so hard I almost couldn't press the next number on my phone. Just one call. That's all it would take. Because if he thought I was too masculine to be loved, he was about to find out just how dangerous it was to underestimate a woman who owned the damn house he slept in. And he didn't know the half of what I'd already planned for us, especially for him. Before all this, I really thought we were a team. His name's Dylan. We met 3 years ago at a mutual friend's bonfire in Austin. He was charming, confident, funny, said he loved how driven I was. I'd just been promoted to charge nurse at the trauma unit, pulling 60-hour weeks, but he always said it was sexy how ambitious I was. He was between jobs when we met. He said he was working on a startup, which turned out to be code for I trade crypto from my couch and sometimes sell sneakers online. Still, I didn't mind. I believed in him. When his landlord raised the rent, I told him to move in with me. When I found the perfect 2-bedroom bungalow on the east side, I put the down payment down myself, but I told him it was ours. We built a life, or at least I thought we did. He loved to play this role of the thoughtful boyfriend, cooking dinner when I worked night shifts, sending sweet texts. But looking back, it was like he was performing affection. Whenever something didn't go his way, he'd twist the blame around until I felt guilty for even breathing wrong. Like when I asked about his job search and he said, "You don't trust me to handle my own life." Or when I bought a car for work and he told me it made him feel like I was trying to outshine him. But I brushed it off. Every woman I knew had heard something similar from a man at some point. How we're too assertive, too strong, too something. I told myself he was just insecure, that love meant helping someone through their lows. Things started shifting when I refinanced the house. My credit was good, and I wanted the lower interest rate. He was supposed to be a cosigner, but his finances didn't check out. He got weird about it, asked me to trust him and not put everything in writing. I refused because I wasn't stupid. That's when the fights started. He'd call me controlling. Say I made him feel small. Then he'd go dark for a few days, no texts, no calls, before showing up with flowers, saying I was his rock. The emotional whiplash was constant. But every time I thought about walking away, he'd find a way to pull me back. Then last month, he started working out a lot more, buying new clothes, talking about alignment and finding peace. It sounded like self-improvement until I noticed how often he mentioned his gym friend, Marissa. She was helping him find balance. He said she made him feel grounded. I should have listened to that gut feeling. The night before I made the last payment on the house, he'd taken me to dinner. He told me I was finally learning to relax, and I remember thinking maybe things were getting better. We went home, made love, and he whispered that he couldn't wait to start a new chapter with me. Less than a week later, he was calling me too masculine and telling me to get therapy. And that new chapter he mentioned. It started with her moving in. But what Dylan didn't know was that my name wasn't just on the deed. It was also on every single piece of mail, every utility, every Wi-Fi bill, and the mortgage company. They didn't know a thing about his new roommate. For 2 days, I did nothing. No yelling, no calls, no messages. I just let him think I was broken. That's how people like him get comfortable. They mistake silence for surrender. He posted a selfie on Instagram the next day, grinning next to her in the kitchen I remodeled. The caption said, "Peace comes when you stop fighting what's not meant for you." My friends texted screenshots. One even drove by and saw her car parked in my driveway, like she belonged there. I didn't reply to anyone. I just sat at my kitchen table. Well, technically the kitchen table I bought and had to leave behind, and started writing down every single thing that was in my name. Gas, water, electric, mortgage, insurance, property taxes, trash pickup. I made a list of who to call and when. Because when you work in a trauma unit, you learn how to act under stress. Panic never helps, precision does. That night I drove past the house. My house. The curtains were drawn, but I could see flickers of light from the TV inside. His car was in the driveway, hers too. 2 wine glasses sat on the porch rail. They were laughing. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands cramped. For a second, I almost got out. Almost pounded on the door, screamed, demanded to know how someone could betray another person so completely after everything they'd built together. But I didn't. I forced myself to drive away. Because revenge, real revenge, doesn't come from impulse. It comes from calculation. Over the next few days, I started collecting information. Old texts where he admitted he wasn't on the mortgage. Screenshots of him saying the house technically belonged to me. Emails from my lender, copies of the deed. I filed it all neatly, just in case. Then I called the utility companies, told them I'd be moving temporarily and needed to suspend service for a few weeks. Electricity, gas, water, internet, all paused starting the following Monday. Then I called the HOA. Reported a non-authorized occupant living on my property. They said they'd investigate. And finally, I called a locksmith. Explained that I owned a property, but the locks had been changed without my consent. He said, "Happens more often than you think, just show proof of ownership." I booked him for Friday morning. Thursday night, I parked across the street again. Watched the lights go out one by one. Saw his shadow pass by the window I once hung curtains in. Saw her silhouette behind him. My chest felt hollow. But underneath the pain, there was something else. This cold, clean clarity. He thought he'd humiliated me. But what he didn't understand was that when you take everything from someone who built you from the ground up, they don't crumble. They calculate. And by Friday morning, when he woke up, the power would be out. And so would he. Friday morning, I showed up just after dawn. The locksmith met me out front. He was this older guy with a calm, no-nonsense vibe. I showed him my ID, the property deed, the mortgage statement, all matching my name. He looked at the papers, nodded once, and said, "Lady, this is your house." We went to work. The locks were replaced within 15 minutes. I thanked him, paid in cash, and he drove off. My hands were shaking as I walked up the steps. The front door creaked open. I stepped inside to find everything exactly how I remembered it, and nothing like it at all. There were her shoes by the door, her purse on the counter, a throw blanket I didn't own draped over my couch. It smelled like perfume and fake peace. I took a deep breath and walked to the breaker box. Every switch flipped down in one motion. Silence. No power, no water, no Wi-Fi, no comfort. Then I walked back to the front door, locked it from the inside, and sat on the staircase. Waiting. It didn't take long. About half an hour later, I heard the engine outside, the slam of a car door. Then his voice muffled through the wood. "What the hell?" He tried his key, jiggled it, knocked hard. "Open up what the—" I didn't move. He started pounding. "You can't just— this isn't—" Then I heard her voice. Soft, nervous. "Babe, what's going on?" I smiled. I wanted him to say it out loud, to realize what he'd done. Finally, I opened the door just enough for him to see my face. "This isn't your house," I said quietly. You don't live here. He blinked, confused at first. Then his expression shifted anger, disbelief, then that manipulative charm I'd fallen for. Come on, babe, don't do this. You're upset, I get it. Let's just talk, okay? You're acting crazy. Crazy, I said, stepping outside. You moved another woman into my home and told me I needed therapy. He laughed, but it was brittle. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's not even legally your place like that. You said it was ours. I held up the deed. You signed nothing, you're a guest, a very temporary one. For the first time, I saw real panic flicker behind his eyes. He turned to her, stammering something about a misunderstanding. But she wasn't looking at him anymore, she was looking at me. And she looked terrified. That's when she said something that froze me. He told me you left. He said this was his house, bought under his name. My stomach dropped. I turned to him. You what? He didn't answer. That's when I saw her luggage in the trunk of her car, suitcases, boxes. She hadn't just moved in. She'd moved out of somewhere else. He'd told her he owned the house, that I was his unstable ex who still showed up sometimes. He'd conned her into thinking she was moving into her boyfriend's brand new home. And the worst part, he wasn't surprised that I found out. He smirked. Like this was all part of some bigger, uglier plan. Because what I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until later, was that Dylan had been doing this long before me. I didn't scream. Didn't even cry. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and saw it, this flicker of enjoyment. He loved the chaos. The confusion. The way we were both standing there, trying to make sense of the lies. When he realized I wasn't breaking, his tone flipped fast. You're embarrassing yourself, he snapped. You can't just kick people out like this. You'll regret it. I turned and walked inside, locking the door behind me. He started yelling through it, threatening to call the cops. So I called them first. The dispatcher listened quietly as I explained. My name is on the deed, someone changed my locks without authorization, and they're refusing to leave my property. 20 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up. When the officers arrived, I met them outside with the paperwork. They didn't even need to see much. One look at the deed, one glance at my driver's license, and that was it. They told Dylan and the softer girl to gather their things and leave. She looked mortified. He looked like he'd swallowed glass. As they walked out, he muttered, "You're going to regret this. You think you're smart, but you're not." I just smiled. "No, Dylan, I'm precise." When they finally pulled out of the driveway, I closed the door, turned off my phone, and sat in silence for a long, long time. The house was empty again, but it didn't feel like peace yet. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm, because something about that smirk wouldn't leave my head. I started digging. Old emails, messages, bank statements. His startup wasn't just a side hustle, it was a front. I found payment receipts from at least 2 other women, money transfers labeled investment, rent, loan for us, all sent to him, thousands of dollars over the past couple of years. He'd been running a long con, building relationships with women who had stable jobs, making them believe they were building a life together, and then draining them emotionally and financially before moving on. It wasn't about love. It was about control, and I wasn't done yet. That night I made a few more calls. First, to my cousin Mark, he's a real estate attorney. Then to my friend Becca, who works at a local paper's investigative section. I told them everything. Names, dates, proof. Mark helped me draft a notice of unauthorized occupancy, legally barring Dylan from stepping foot on the property again. If he tried, it'd be trespassing. Becca, meanwhile, told me she'd heard whispers about a man in Austin running a house-hopping scam. It was him. It had to be, but I didn't want to just expose him. I wanted him to feel it. So I waited, watched his socials. Watched him spiral, posting vague, haters will never win stories, tagging random women at bars, pretending like he was thriving. Then I set up the final move. A quiet one. Surgical. Because if Dylan thought losing a house was bad, he was about to find out what it's like to lose his entire identity. And the woman he called too masculine, she was just getting started. 2 weeks passed before I heard from her again, the softer one, Marissa. She showed up at the hospital where I worked, of all places. She looked different, worn down, pale, like she hadn't slept. When I saw her standing in the waiting room, I honestly thought she'd come to fight. I was ready for that. Instead, she said quietly, "Can we talk?" We went outside to the employee smoking area behind the building. She sat on the concrete ledge, hugging her arms, and said, I didn't know about any of it. Turns out, after Dylan got kicked out, he told her I was vindictive, that I'd trapped him financially. But she'd started piecing things together after checking her own bank account, because she'd been giving him money too. Not a lot, but enough to notice once she stopped. He told her it was for mortgage payments, to help get us ahead. She showed me her transactions. I almost laughed. They were the exact same dates as my mortgage drafts. He'd been double-dipping, using her money to make me think he was contributing. I felt sick, but not surprised. She looked at me and said, "He's doing it again. He's already with someone new. She's in Round Rock." That's when it hit me. Dylan didn't just move on fast. He recycled women. He found a pattern: smart, financially stable, emotionally nurturing. Then he'd twist those strengths into weaknesses, make them feel guilty for being independent, then lean on them financially until they were empty. Marissa wanted to help me stop him, so we made a deal. She'd stay in touch with him, pretend she wanted to fix things, and feed me every message he sent. Meanwhile, I'd gather everything into a clean, documented trail. His messages, his fake business pitch, screenshots of his transfers. It was a full-blown fraud portfolio. Within days, she was forwarding texts of him bragging about how he always lands on his feet, how he had another place lined up. He told her his new girlfriend was a nurse or something. I almost laughed out loud at the irony. Then he made a mistake. He sent her a voice note where he admitted to using the house money from Austin to set up this new one. He said it like a joke, laughing about how women can't let go. We had it on tape. I sent everything: documents, screenshots, audio to Becca at the paper. She didn't hesitate. Within a week, she and her editor had tracked down 2 more women. One from San Antonio, one from Dallas, same story. When the piece ran online, it didn't name him outright. Just a man operating under various aliases, conning women through long-term relationships. But people figured it out fast. His social media disappeared within hours. His LinkedIn went dark, and that's when I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "You don't understand what you've started. You think you won. You don't even know what that house really paid for." At first, I thought it was an empty threat. Then I remembered something Marissa had told me, a line he dropped when he was drunk once. That he wasn't just living off women. He was investing in something secret, something expensive, something that made me realize I hadn't reached the bottom of his lies yet. It took 3 days before I found out what he meant. 3 days of my stomach twisting every time my phone buzzed. Then Becca called. Her voice was tight, like she didn't want to say what she had to say. "Remember how you said he mentioned a startup?" she asked. "Yeah, it wasn't crypto. It was worse." She sent me a link, a private listing from a sketchy business exchange site. There it was in black and white. A consultancy called Modern Masculine Systems, registered under one of Dylan's known aliases. At first glance, it looked like some coaching thing. But the deeper you clicked, the darker it got. It was a network. A paid online community where men reclaimed their power by reversing modern female control. He'd built an entire business model off teaching men how to financially and emotionally dominate women under the guise of restoring balance. And the funding for his business. It came from us. Every house, every joint purchase, every investment. He was using women's money to bankroll this operation. Videos, workshops, coaching calls, subscriptions. He wasn't just a con artist, he was a recruiter. The house I'd worked 3 years to buy had literally paid for a course teaching men how to manipulate women like me. It hit me like a physical blow. I felt sick. My chest hurt. I couldn't even breathe for a few seconds. Becca's voice broke through the static in my head. "He's been running this for over 2 years. He's made tens of thousands. Some of the content uses screenshots of women's messages, probably yours." I went cold, completely cold. He'd recorded me. He'd used my pain, my breakdowns, my texts, the things I said when I thought we were in love, and turned them into content. Proof for his followers that strong women can be broken if you know how. That's why he never hid. That smirk wasn't arrogance, it was calculation. He wanted me to react, to be the next example. The psycho ex who couldn't handle a real man. The house, the betrayal, the therapy, jab, it was all part of his curriculum. And now I understood that message he'd sent me. "You don't know what that house really paid for." He was right, I hadn't, but now I did. And that changed everything. Because exposing him to a few women wasn't enough anymore. It wasn't justice. It wasn't even revenge, it was cleanup. I wanted total ruin. I wanted his empire, his modern masculine systems, to burn from the inside out piece by piece. So I called Marissa again, told her what I'd found. Her voice shook, but she didn't hesitate. Tell me what to do. And right then, I knew this wasn't just about getting even. This was about ending him publicly, permanently, and poetically. And for that, I had a plan that would hit him where it really hurt. Not his heart. Not his bank account. His followers. I did it slow and I did it clean. No manic posts, no drunken confrontations, just leverage and patience. I wanted him shredded on terms he understood. Public humiliation measured in subscribers, dollars, and credibility. First, Becca's piece morphed into something bigger. She and her editor ran a follow-up: names, bank trails, the recorded voice note, and the full story on his modern masculine systems. They published it with the receipts. Screenshots of payments from women's accounts, sample lesson clips he'd sold to subscribers, and a list of aliases he'd used. The comment section lit up. People demanded more. The other journalists started digging. While the press did its work, I worked the platform he'd built. Marissa, brave, terrified, determined, kept him on the line. She stringed him along for 3 weeks, pretending to want to help him rebuild. Every pathetic brag, every flat-out lie, she recorded and forwarded to me. He told her names of members, moderators, even a private chat invite link once. He didn't realize his ego was handing me the keys. With that link, I joined the private group, anonymously, of course. It was worse than I imagined. Men trading tactics for emotional sabotage, screenshots of women taken out of context, pay-to-play mastermind sessions. I gathered everything: lesson PDFs, payment pages, promo emails. Then I fed it to the right people. I contacted the platform hosts, the payment processors, and the domain registrar. I was surgical. This content is fraud, non-consensual exploitation, and violates your terms. We have victims and receipts. Within 72 hours, payments started failing. Subscriptions froze. The domain registrar flagged the site. The host issued takedowns. His email bounced. His payment gateway closed his merchant account for suspicious activity. Then, Becca and her team published the follow-up piece with the added sting: quotes from 2 women who'd recognized their own messages in his course modules. That cracked the narrative wide open. Twitter threads and subreddit investigations compiled his aliases. Former members posted receipts and their own horror stories. Men who'd once praised his methods deleted histories, then apologized. Sponsors cut ties. Podcast bookings vanished. He tried to pivot, texted dozens of people begging for help, calling me by every name he thought would scare me. When that failed, he texted Marissa begging her to take him back. She sent me screenshots. I created a small, private dossier and sent it to a legal aid who specialized in online fraud. They advised civil suits and criminal referrals. I filed the initial complaint that afternoon. But the final blow was personal and petty in the best way possible. I arranged, through one of the investigators, for a short, razor-sharp documentary segment on a local morning show. It aired 2 weeks later: footage of his empty storefront setups, audio of him laughing about making women pay for my stability, interviews with 2 victims, and my calm, unblinking face describing how the house paid for his business. The host closed with, "If you donated to or enrolled in this program, call this number." The number? The prosecutor's tip line. Calls poured in. He lost members, money, dignity. He tried a last-ditch apology video, hands shaking, smudged mascara at his collar, the kind of performance he once used to soothe me. No one bought it. His old followers mocked the delivery, his recruiter buddies ghosted. The business evaporated. Standing in the kitchen that night, the one I painted and regrouted with my own hands, I let myself cry. Not from victory, those were small, brittle things, but from exhaustion. From the jolt of realizing I'd been building something and someone else had banked on breaking me for profit. Then I texted Marissa a photo of the living room, clean and silent, and she sent back a selfie of her 2 weeks later. Softer, yes, but not the kind of softness he meant. Grounded, finally safe. Before bed, I called the mortgage company and updated the account with new security measures and fraud alerts. I filed the civil suit to freeze any assets linked to his aliases. I left his threats in the folder with the other receipts. They were evidence now, not wounds. He once told me I was too masculine to be loved. Maybe he meant I was too forceful, too loud, too controlling. Maybe that was his word for someone who refused to be softened into passivity. This morning I walked out to the porch, unlocked the front door with my own key, and opened it. I stood there, in the doorway of the house I'd paid for, and smiled, not because I'd won some public war, but because I could let the silence be mine again. Then I changed the locks one more time. Kicker. He thought he was teaching men how to reclaim power. Turns out, you can't monetize cruelty for long, especially when the woman who bought the house knows exactly where the levers are.